Okay, hi everybody. I'm here today with Kelsey Lowitz. Kelsey is a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, and has done a lot of work on her own relationship with money. And she is the owner of Kelsey Lowitz Integrative Health. And today I'd like to just ask Kelsey some questions about women's relationship with their own ability to self-nurture and self-care. So hello, Kelsey.
Hi, how are you, Karen? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Kelsey. Can I just get you to speak a little bit about what you do and who you help?
Sure. I'm a life coach and an acupuncturist, and I'm based out of Oakland, California. And I help women, sort of that hard driving, get ahead, do more, work harder type of woman. I help that woman, whether she's in the corporate world or running her own business or, each of those usually. I help her slow down, tune into her own heart and her inner wisdom so that she can set better boundaries, work less hard and achieve more, and really incorporate this concept that I'm talking about called slow power, which is this ability to slow it down, tune into the body, the heart, and the soul, and your intuition, so that you can have more power and be more effective in the work that you do in the world. More creative, more inspired, not burnt out. So I coach a lot of women and I work with them. Usually they've come to me because something's not working, a relationship or a health issue or something like that. So something's not working, and we turn it on its head and say, where are you overgiving? Where do you need more boundaries? And how can we have more fun and ease in our lives?
Ooh, that sounds wonderful. Mm-hmm. So Kelsey, tell me, in terms of these women that come to you that tend to be overdo, overgive, what tends to be their relationship with money?
Well, I can speak for myself because I'm a recovering version of this person myself. Usually this overgiving tendency also comes from a lack of self-worth. And so as it relates to money, if you're setting your own rates or wages, maybe you don't charge enough for the work you do, you give too much. So I have some clients who are charging by the hour for acupuncture or something, and they undercharge and overgive in each session. So what ends up happening is they burn out, get resentful, and don't take care of their financial needs as a symbol of not taking care of all of their needs, right? So there's an off balance piece of their money story as well, for sure. I don't do as much of the money story as you do, but I think that's where the parallel is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so here's another question for you. A woman comes to you and they are in that place where they're actually not charging for their services in a way that nourishes them, and they're overgiving or giving away free lessons or free sessions. So what are some of the first steps that you encourage them to do, like, so that they can start on a new way of being with themselves, which will indeed serve who they're serving in a deeper way?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll just add in this other type of person, because not everybody charges, by the hour unless they're running a business like we do. I have lots of people who are on salary, but they don't negotiate for a raise. They're not negotiating for promotion. They're doing way more that they need to at their level and not getting recognized for it. So it's both, right? I help them, the pillars of the program are basically this, right? At first I help them just understand. There's like a self-awareness component that's like, who am I? How am I built like this? And yeah, just accepting who they are, what they really want out of the world. So getting really in touch with what I call it is mapping their undiscovered self. And we do work with the Enneagram, which is a personality typing system, and work on the person's values and do their human design. And it's helping them understand and accept who they are, which might include some of this information about overgiving and whatever. So just awareness first. And then we look a lot at the inner voice that keeps us stuck, which is usually some form of an inner critic or a fear voice or a should, right? Some cultural or familial voice that says, this is how it should be done. And we look at where that first came from and the patterns and how that evolved, because we didn't just wake up one day and become overgivers, right? It goes way back. There's a family and a cultural background around it usually. Oh my gosh, sorry. That was loud. Excuse me, as I'm overdoing right here. So we figure out who they are. We go back and look at the patterns, the inner critic. I do a lot of work around self-compassion and I'll just call it self-compassion right now. The mindfulness of the pattern so that they can recognize what gets in the way when they try either to set a boundary or ask for more or whatever. There's obviously some pattern that gets in the way. If it were easy, they would have done it already, right? So identifying why it's not easy. And then lastly, or not exactly lastly, but last in this sort of version of it, we work on boundaries, how to set, maintain, and work with healthy boundaries and that requires a lot of work around self-worth. So the self-compassion, self-worth, and boundaries. And then what I find is, well, with the boundaries, there's also this delegating and letting go, because in the overdoing, there's a taking over responsibility for someone or something else. So there's a letting go of that. And then in this, what I find in the spaciousness that comes from doing that work and letting go, without even forcing it, they get promotions or raises, right? When they're raising their own prices, there's a little bit of an extra, lift there. But in my experience working with these women in the corporate world, they do all that work. They get easier on themselves. They get easier to work with. They have a better time doing their work. They're more fun to work with. They're doing better work. They get promoted. They get a raise, right? It just, there's an ease with which the money can come in the corporate world, and then in the private, in the individual business, they have to do some work around raising prices.
Great. It's almost like money is a mirror to the internal world, or your relationship with money, how it manifests in the world is sort of a reflection of what goes on in the inner world.
Yes. And where there's clenching and tightness towards themselves and others, it doesn't allow the money to flow either. That's my experience as well.
Wonderful. So Kelsey, you talked about this, working with these women. You've done your own work, and as a result, you can help these women. So can you give some of the people that are listening to this a few tips on what you did in order to overcome that part of you that tended to overdo for others at the expense of your own needs, and particularly around money, if you can particularly. Because I know you've done a lot of work on that. So
right. Well, specifically around money, I worked with you. Am I allowed to say that? I did your coaching program. I mean, that was really, really impactful for me because I learned through that the money archetypes and where I was low in terms of some of the, archetypes that I needed to bring in. I remember one of them, identifying where I was and then where I wanted to go, and just, some practice, basically practice. I'll start with that. It's practice. So what you practice. I practiced loosening up around money. I practiced asking for more help. I practiced allowing money to flow through, to spend it on myself, to give myself little treats that I needed when I wanted them. Self-compassion is sort of the underpinning of all of this. So recognizing when I was in a struggle around money, allowing it, and then nurturing it. There's been a lot of sort of reparenting the little girl in me that felt very tight around money and around doing enough and being enough. And so the self-compassion work, I did a lot of Kristen Neff's work and Tara Brach, and over and over and over, the practice of I'm enough, I'm good enough, I'm deserving of my own love and affection, as well as other people's, has not allowed not just money to come through, but much more ease in relationships and in my work. I guess that's the highlights. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's very interesting because it's almost like you've unplugged yourself from a culture that we live in that feeds on us believing that we're not enough.
Right.
And it's like you're plugged yourself into a whole different, a more nourishing matrix. Can I call it a matrix?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. The focus, at some point, I had to shift the focus from pleasing others to nurturing myself, from first deciding what everybody else needed from me so that I could be enough and get approval and get validation, and get to first checking in with myself, which is this slow power concept, and checking in, slowing down, because my first response is always, sure, I can do it. I'll do it. What can I do? You know, how can I help?
It's like that kind of yes, a sort of a knee-jerk yes, before actually slowing down and going, okay, is this actually the compassionate yes, or is this a people-pleasing yes, right?
Yes. Is it the deep, resounding yes, or is it just yes, sure, but that, you know, that yes, sure, but forget about me, like that negates or neglects my own knowing, right? And my own knowing is often, sometimes it's yes, or it's yes and, you know, so I coach busy women to do this pause and breathe before saying yes, because in the corporate world, especially the go-to person, can you do this thing for me? Yes. Let me just do yes. So I say, just pause and breathe before saying yes, because it could be, yes, I can get that for you next Wednesday, or yes, I can get that for you, but actually, don't you think this is better for so-and-so? Or yes, I can get that for you, but I can actually only spend 5 minutes on it. Would that be okay? Like, there's all these questions that we can ask ourselves rather than just, yes, I can do that for you. Because then we take on too much. We decide we need to do it right away. We need to spend an hour on it. We need to, for all these things for other people. And just learning to pause and breathe, even if the answer is yes, sometimes it's yes and this, or yes, I try not to say but or no, right? Just, yeah, I can. And here's how that will work for me.
Nice. You've resurrected a memory in my mind. I used to have a language. Every time somebody said something and I responded to it, I'd begin with the word no. And I realized, gosh, I do that all the time. I say no at the beginning of all my sentences. And so just training myself to actually let go of the no and begin the sentence with the subject, or, you know, the pronoun, and really change my relationship with receiving and actually allowing things in, you know.
Yeah.
Really interesting, because as a woman who overgives, and as a woman who doesn't look after our financial needs, or, you know, or looks after people's needs at the expense of others, has very, well, in my experience of working with clients, has a big difficulty and challenge of actually allowing things in and receiving.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, receiving praise, receiving money, receiving what have you. That has been a big challenge of mine as well. And it's interesting that you would start the sentence with, no, I can't imagine, because I can't see that in you. But it's almost like that was a way you set a boundary, that, you know, just saying that set a boundary. And it's not the most effective boundary, right? There's another way to do it that it sounds like you were able to grow into.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you can't recognize that in me now.
I don't.
I worked a few years on that, you know. That's great. Well, thank you, Kelsey. This has been amazing.
You're so welcome. I would do this. I would talk to you any day, all day, Karen. So my pleasure.
Just to let everyone know, Kelsey Lowitz is actually starting a 6-week program called the Whole Life Leadership Program. It starts on April 21st and it goes on for 6 weeks.
August 21st.
Oh, sorry, what did I say?
You said April.
Oh, sorry, August 21st, in a couple of weeks' time. And that includes 2 bonus calls as well. Is there anything else you want to say on that?
No, you can just find out more about it at kelseylowitz.com. Under Work With Me, there's a place that says Online Group Program. And it's a great way to kind of go through the pillars that I talked a little bit about in a small group format, where there's a lot of sharing, and it's over Zoom just like this.
Right, absolutely. And I was going to say something. Oh yeah, so it's really working on slowing women.
Slowing the slow power, so that you can pause and breathe before saying yes, so that you can understand how to set boundaries, so you can understand yourself and your inner critic, and bring some self-compassion to the situation. So basically those things that I mentioned earlier, none of which happens when you're moving really fast, right? When you're moving really fast, you go to your old patterns. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. I'll take responsibility. And so it's tools that as you learn to slow down are much easier to access because they're inside of you already.
Beautiful, beautiful. With life being so busy today, with a lot of mundane stuff thrown at us, you know, that wonderful quality or ability, I'm not sure, skill actually, of discerning and discriminating. And it's only through the slowing down that you can say yes to this and no to that, and yes to this and no to that, right?
Yes.
So we kind of need hand-holding around that because there's so much thrown at us every day. And trying to sift through and end up spending a lot of time on things that are wasting our precious energy, right?
Right. Well, and I like what you said about hand-holding. We do. I mean, I think that all the time. It's like, well, why can't we just do this on our own? Well, we weren't shown it. Most of our mothers didn't know how to do it. And our cultural programming is so not this way. So we need to hold hands, and we need to hold hands with each other and support each other and other women as we grow this muscle, which is going to lead us to much more happy and fulfilled and abundant lives.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey.
My pleasure.
I will certainly be taking this whole life leadership program in the future.
I can't wait.
Yes. And thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.